Hi, my name's Karl, and I've been involved in the hacks since they first started here in New Zealand. The first few hacks I was involved just as an observer, seeing how other people were running and leading the hacks, and then lately I've taken on the lead role for the hacks here in New Zealand, and I've done that over the past 3 hacks that we've run here in New Zealand, and I've learnt several lessons over that time over what works and what doesn't.
My experience with HACK has been as a coordinator for HACK and then early on as a participant for HACK. Over the years we've really, focused in on refining the projects so that we can actually solve the problems that we're given in a weekend. Early on these projects were quite broad, very difficult to actually get something useful out by the end of the weekend. But as the years have passed and our experience has grown, it's been exciting to see projects that we can actually have a meaningful contribution towards done in a weekend.
In my experience of talking to Christians who have these particular tech skills, that often they feel like they're not, their particular skill set is not understood or valued well in the Christian world. So you get these people who have these amazing skills and they get told, oh cool, can you run the PowerPoint at church? and they're like, well I could, but that's not really where they're at and what drives them. But also in their work field, they find that often it's really hard to connect people that have that same passion, that same spiritual drive, and that mission of helping to build God's kingdom. And so for them to be able to be in a community or take part in an event that helps those two worlds to meet is something that I think is really important, that people will really get a lot of value out of.
As a software engineer, I'm really interested in shipping things that actually matter. For Christians, we have the greatest reason to make anything, and that is to tell people about Jesus. And so I think it's incumbent on us to communicate to people who are participating in HACK this why, so that they really understand the solutions to the problems that they're solving have a real impact on people.
Some of the lessons I've learned were about, they came from the frustrations that people who are participating in the hacks had had. And for me, because I don't have the technical skills that a lot of the people participating in hacks have, that I wasn't aware of those frustrations or able to anticipate them. But from getting feedback from them, I was able to find out things like how the experience didn't work particularly well for them. Things like how maybe the project was just way too big to be accomplished in a weekend, and it was far too ambitious, and that made things really difficult to plan in terms of how you're going to do anything even meaningful. Other problems with things like, as the groups were forming, finding out that there were people at very different levels of skills on things. So some people needed to be a little bit handheld through the process because they didn't have the particular skills that ended up being adopted to try to solve that project. Their skills might have been in a different area. And so that ended up being frustrating, both for the people who are having to do the hand-holding and lead people through, because they would prefer to actually get down and work on something, but also for the people on the other side of that as well, because they're sitting there thinking, well, I wish I could actually contribute a bit more meaningfully to what's going on here.
The main frustration that I've experienced is that often with hackathons, people come with quite a broad range of skill sets. And so often, especially when it comes to technology, we can't really have projects and solutions that cover such a broad range of technology. My main gripe with this is that people will come with different understandings of programming languages, and so trying to mash that all together over the course of a weekend is very, very difficult. It would obviously be much more ideal if we could organise people into skill sets beforehand so that they can kind of come and join teams that excel in the areas that they also do excel in. So for example, having a team that writes their whole solution in TypeScript would mean that anyone who knows how to do JavaScript or TypeScript can come in and contribute to that project in a meaningful way. Yeah.
There are two different types of people that are going to come and be involved in a hack. There are those that are the software developers, software engineers, programmers. They come with these specific technical skills and they really want to use them. And if you don't have a project where they can use those skills, they're not really that interested in being a part of things. But then there are other people who maybe don't have those particular skills, or they're not so developed. And so for them, they need something where they can get in on a project with the skills that they have. And so because of that, I've made it a point to always have at least one coding project and at least one non-coding project. And that's been something that I think has been a really simple but really effective decision to help people get the most out of the weekend.
So I think the goal when choosing and selecting a project to fit into the weekend of hack is to actually choose projects that people can make a meaningful contribution to within the window of the weekend. Now I think as an engineer it's very difficult to actually size things beforehand, and so I guess a general rule of thumb is to ask a few industry experts about how long they would actually think about it would take to solve the problem that you're posing, and maybe multiply that by 2 because of the environment that you find in a hack, which is a bunch of people who typically don't know each other too well, and so they haven't yet sorted out their own skill sets amongst themselves, and that will give you a good ballpark figure to work with. So typically what I've looked for is problems that you could probably resolve in about 12 hours. Because often you'll have project coordination beforehand, and then at the very end you're looking to do project presentations. And so if the team can actually be working productively for a period of time in that weekend, it's usually around 12 hours. Because these are projects that we're doing over a weekend. A lot of them are explorative. You know, you're trying out something that maybe hasn't been tried, you're solving a problem that hasn't been solved. And in such a short time frame, the reality is that not all of the projects are going to be successful. Not all of them are going to be of enduring value, and that's okay. The nature of working agile is that you're going to try things and they're going to fail sometimes, but you take what you learn and then you take those lessons into the next time you try something. And what's really exciting has been seeing some projects that are able to be taken that next step and, we can take this and develop it further. This was a really good starting point to be able to go further into something. And where I really saw this happen well was with a project that was brought by a missionary to a tiny island in the Cook Islands called Puka Puka. He had actually come to me. He wanted to ask if we could help build a lexicon for the Puka Puka language. And I said, I don't think we can do that. But I said, what we can do is we can create a visual media, a visual telling of a Bible story in that language. And I remember that project. During that hack, we were starting to work on it, got halfway through and no one had taken up that project. And I was thinking in my mind, I don't want to go back to this guy and say, look, no one did any work on this. So I started to work on it myself, pulled my iPad out, found an app that did animation, and so I started to do this. And over a period of about 8 hours, and me, I'm no animator, I'm no artist, I was able to have something that told the story, and the story was Jesus calming the storm. And it was in this language, and it's the only Bible story in this language on the internet. And so that was amazing. We were able to do something like this, and so because it's such a tiny language, everyone who speaks that language is like, wow, there's something in our language. And so that was awesome, even despite the fact that my artwork looks like kids' artwork. Now, where this was especially valuable was that
I was able to take what I had from this project into conversations I was having with school principals who wanted to find a way to incorporate digital technology into their curriculum to get their kids involved in using digital technology for Christian purposes. And I took a look at this and saw my artwork and said, oh, it looks like kids' artwork. And I realised, hey, actually kids can do this. And so I was able to take that away, and we've several times now run one-day events when kids have worked together in teams to use iPads to do animated stories in Māori, the Indigenous language of New Zealand.
I think the value of Hack is that people get an opportunity to see into a world that they're not usually involved in. And I have experienced this with many software engineers who have come along. They've not really paired together that they, as Christians, they can actually be solving problems to see more and more people come to know Jesus. It's just not something that has probably ever crossed their mind. Working in software, they've probably had an enterprise background or something like that, and so they've not usually seen how they compare those two things together. So I think the biggest value really is that it gives people a genuine opportunity, even if it's in a small scale, to be involved in kingdom work.